Hello and welcome back to another Star Wars Unlimited deck tech here at Acorn Hobbies. My name is Camden and today I'm bringing you the Budget Boba deck tech. This is your deck. If you want to hop into the game, learn a really easy deck to play but still win a bunch of games, this is the deck for you. We're going to be looking at Hero Boba here, and at the recording of this video, this deck cost only $74.06. Now, who knows what that could be within a week? The market is crazy. It goes up and down. But this deck shouldn't cost you too much more than $100 because it's mostly uncommons and rares. So let's go ahead and dive right into this. So this is the whole deck, and it's called Even Browner Batman as a little nudge towards Unplayable. They had a deck tech that was Chewbacca Red, and they called it Brown Batman. That's what Parker at SwooDB had it show up as, and now it's kind of a joke within that community. Even Browner Batman. So this is the randomly generated name, but you can find this on SwooDB right now. I will have a link in the description to this deck, but we're going to jump right in and talk about the different packages that make this deck so strong, because I think that the keyworded abilities of Boba Fett are really, really, really great. Like, he does so many things. He's so versatile. Because his ability says when you play a unit that has one or more keywords, you can exhaust them. And if you do, you give a friendly unit +1/+0 for this phase. He flips it 6 and turns it into a 4/7, and then has a static effect that lets all of your keyworded cards have +1 attack. So he is basically giving your ambush cards +1 attack when they hit, which is why the ambush package is the most important package in the deck. Boba is made for ambush cards, so there are a bunch of them here. So this is what's included in the main deck. We'll get to the sideboard later. But I have 2 Cloud Riders, just cheap, basically 4/1 ambushes. 2 cost, deal 4 to a ground unit is great. Then I have the Ozatuk. It's basically a 4 cost 4/4 ambush in space, which is really good. Then you've got the Escort Skiff. We're playing a lot of green, so this is going to trigger pretty often. It's a 4/4 with a conditional ambush while you control another green unit, so that makes it a 5/4 ambush. Modded Cohort, same thing. It's basically a 4/4 ambush because it has raid 2. This one's not conditional, so we have 3 of them, and it becomes a 5/4 with Boba. The Marauder is basically a 5/5 ambush in space, and it could be a conditional ramp. It happens more often than you think in this deck, and you can maybe even make the deck even stronger by putting more cards with the same name. So I totally think that the Marauder is a great card. The Falcon is another conditional ambush where if you play it from your hand, but we have 3 of them because the smuggle cost also allows you to just have units in space. It's good to be able to contest things when you want to be able to hit something in space with ambush, but also to be able to have threats that show up that maybe your opponent can't deal with. We've got 2 Infus Nest here. This one is one I waffled back and forth on. 3 feels really strong, but sometimes I end up just resourcing them anyways. But yeah, 6 cost 5/4 turns into a 6/4 ambush, and when a friendly unit is attacking using ambush, the defender gets -3 attack, which is a big deal because we have a lot of ambush, as you're seeing. And then finally, Han Solo. He's the classic quintessential ambush card in Hero. He's a 7 cost 6/6 that turns into a 7/6, and he deals combat damage before the defender. Han being able to take down a fully healthy Vader is a really, really big deal. So be careful about, where you're throwing him down because he's worth it to save for that right moment. But sometimes you just get him on board and he's just tough to deal with. A 6/6 that takes very little damage, if any, on attack. It's a big deal. So this package is huge to keeping control of the board. You're trying to take it back and tempo your opponent out. The extra 1 attack comes in really handy and makes a lot of trades that typically would be unfavorable for your 4 to 5 attack units, and it makes them really, really, really strong. You're able to swing a lot faster at the base. But when your opponent is swinging too much at your base, then you've got the Sentinel package. This is what I think is really, really strong as a Sentinel package. You'll see I've included here 2 of the sideboard cards with Bright Hope. I think that Bright Hope is worth mentioning here because that Sentinel is, even though it's in the sideboard, it's there as the only space Sentinel. So I wanted to make sure that it got talked about. But the Gamorrean Retainer is really strong because it's a 3/2 with a conditional Sentinel. And if you want to play it turn 1, you don't care about giving things the extra attack. So it's great because you have a lot of cheap units to play that are green. So the Echo-based Defender is a great curve. You then have a 4/3 Sentinel and a 3/2 Sentinel. That's blocking a lot of stuff. And because it's got higher attack, you're taking down your opponent's units as you do it, and then you're able to use Ambush to gain control of the board in the subsequent turns. Then Chewbacca, I have 2 of. He is a 3/6 Sentinel, and when he's attacked, you get to ready him up. He's really good as an anti-aggro piece, but he's also really strong because making him a 4/6 is a threshold that a lot of units have, is 4 health. So you're able to break that by giving him the extra attack when you play him. So he becomes really strong, and because he readies up, giving him the extra attack is basically like letting you hit base for 4 rather than for 3, or maybe you want to hit a unit that your opponent doesn't want to attack into a Sentinel, something like that. Giving them the extra attack is really, really worth it. He's one of the few Sentinel units that I think it's worth it to give him the attack while there are other units on board, unless your opponent is just going to be able to take him out in one fell swoop, something like that. But I totally think that Chewie is a great card. And then finally, Bright Hope. Becoming a 3/6 in space is really strong. 3 health is a threshold that we've seen a lot on like A-Wings and stuff like that. So it matters to have 3 health. So giving that a 4-cost 3/6 Sentinel in space is absolutely nuts. After that, though, we've got other keyworded cards. These are cards that I think are really, really good and worth mentioning. We got 2 Fugitive Wookiees. You're probably wondering, why am I running 2-cost 3/3s in Hero Green when I could also run Battlefield Marine? And the answer to that is I've got Battlefield Marine 2. So this one, though, is really unique because it actually has a keyword. So Bounty is a keyword, which lets you take down, or which lets you give the attack to another unit. So that means that your Fugitive Wookiee can become a 4/3 when it's played, or you can play it later in the game where it might seem like a worse play than a Battlefield Marine, but it becomes basically 2 cost, play a 3/3, and give another unit an additional attack, which sometimes after your opponent has already claimed can be worth it to throw an extra attack somewhere and then take out your opponent's units. It's also a 4/3 when Boba is flipped. So while Leader Boba is on board as a unit, he becomes a 4/3, which is just really strong. This is a 2 cost. The Sundari Peacekeeper, incredibly strong. This is an amazing, amazing card. A 3-cost 1/5 with Raid 2, Restore 2. This is your early game anti-aggro that's not a Sentinel. You're happy to pay 4 or 5 for this guy with Timely Intervention as well. So this is just an absolutely amazing card. He is well worth plopping on board and giving a buff to someone else, or giving it to himself when he's being ambushed in through Timely Intervention. This is something that if it sticks around for long, your opponents that are playing aggro just aren't going to stand a chance. That Restore 2 early game is just so strong. We got 2 techs in the sideboard. This is really interesting because he has Smuggle himself, and then your friendly resources gain Smuggle. Now, that doesn't matter as much for when they're flipping onto the board because they're no longer resources when they get played, but it matters because having him in the sideboard lets you have a greater chance against control decks where oftentimes you are struggling to beat all of their removal. This allows you to play a lot of units from resources, which is just a strong way to make sure that you have a board presence, even if it is kind of inefficient paying 2 extra. And then finally, Home 1 as the top of our curve. An 8-cost 7/7 with Restore 2, and each other friendly unit gains Restore 1. And then it's got the Wind Blade to recur. You can play a heroism unit from your discard pile, and it costs 3 less. We have a lot of strong heroism units that cost 3 or less, as well as a few that cost 4 and 5 that are well worth playing. So I think that Home 1 is totally worth including, and because each other friendly unit gains Restore 1, that means that all of your units, while Home 1 is on the board, will buff something else, because guess what? They have a keyword now through Home 1. So Home 1 is a great finisher. It also is a great stabilizer. If you already have a big board, this is a good way to swing to heal a bunch of damage. It is an absolutely amazing play. It's worth having a couple of in your deck. Now here are the utility cards that I've included in the main deck. So I've got Bounty Hunter's Quarry, Timely Intervention, 3 Battlefield Marines, 3 Spark of Hopes, a couple Boba Fett's armor, a couple Mercenary Gunships, and 3 U-Wings. So let's work from left to right here. So our cheapest card that is our utility card is the Bounty Hunter's Quarry. I think this bounty is super strong. Like I said, we have a ton of units that cost 3 or less that are really worth playing, and getting to cheat them out with Bounty Hunter's Quarry is well worth it. I think that honestly, if you want to, flavor to taste, you can put more of these in the main board. This bounty is just an amazing way to make sure you're holding the board constantly. I only have one of in the main deck because sometimes it can be slow playing out an upgrade onto your opponent's unit, and by then they've already attacked. Maybe they've hit your base, and then your ambush doesn't feel as impactful because you're, not really able to stop them from hitting you. So sometimes Bounty Hunter's Quarry is just not the absolute best play. So I only have one of in the main deck. I do have 2 Timely Interventions. We have a lot of ambush in the deck, so I feel like we don't necessarily need 3. But playing a unit from your hand and giving an ambush for the phase and then being able to smuggle that for only 1 more is well worth it. It's especially good with these units like the Sundari Peacekeeper and a home one that can just absolutely swing games because of their restore. Then the Battlefield Marine, it's just a good unit. 2 cost 3/3, even with blank text, is really good. It also becomes really good when you follow it up with like an echo-based defender. It's something that becomes a 4/3. You're able to make really awesome trades or hit base with that. It just becomes well worth it. So Battlefield Marine, you want to have 3 of. Spark of Hope is great new ramp. This is something that honestly I think is worth following up on turn 2 or 3 when you trade a unit. Sometimes it's worth it to just not gain board back because you have so much ambush and that 4 to 6 cost slot. So sometimes it's worth it just paying 2 to go ahead and ramp and get some of your bigger ambush out. I think Spark of Hope is really strong, so that's why I have 3 of them in there. Boba Fett's armor, we don't run unit Boba Fett. Even though that would be a fun little thing to do with U-Wing and stuff like that. But Boba Fett's armor is good for your flip turn. Making Boba into a 6/9 that prevents 2 damage whenever it would be dealt to him is just really strong. Sometimes it's even worth it to throw one out there onto an early Sentinel or something like that. It's worth it just to have that extra oomph to keep things away. So Boba Fett's armor, great card. Honestly, I think that this card will probably go up in price, so I'm hoping that maybe this doesn't ruin the whole, title of the video, but this card is well worth including a couple of. The Mercenary Gunship is just there against aggro. It's good to take down the Kylo Ren's ties and the A-Wings because it's got 3 attack. So, yeah, the action ability is not great, but if your opponent is paying for that, then honestly, you're okay with it because you have a lot of ways to deal with that unit, and on top of that, you tend to be in control of the board. So, the Mercenary Gunship is well worth having a couple of. And then finally, U-Wing Reinforcement. Super strong card, got super slept on at the beginning of set 1, but honestly is probably one of the reasons you play Green Hero. Being able to search the top 10 cards of your deck for up to 3 units with a combined cost 7 or less and playing them for free is just incredible. This is a way that with a lot of ambush, you can swing a lot of big turns. Honestly, I wish that there were ways that I could fit more 1 costs, because sometimes it's worth it to have like Inf's Nest come out on U-Wing, but most of the time I'm willing to just take that 1 resource loss to have the ability to search my deck for the card that I need in that moment. You certainly could run like Clone Deserter or something like that, just a strong 1-cost card with a keyword, but I think that it's not worth it because if you're just running it to make your U-Wings better, and U-Wing is already a great card, it seems like you're really not playing to your strengths instead of playing to your weaknesses. So yeah, these utility cards are all great. They all serve a purpose, and you could definitely mix and match how many you have of them within your deck, depending on your flavor to taste. And then here's the sideboard. I have an additional Bounty Hunter's Quarry in the sideboard. Again, just really good. Spare the Target is really good against enemy, like really big units, because a lot of your ambush caps out at like 4 to 6 attack. It's really tough to deal with those huge units. So Spare the Target is worth it for, your reinforcement walkers that you don't really have a board against, something like that. Or now the more that we're seeing of like Crate Dragon and stuff like that, Spare the Target is totally worth it just to have a little bit of time before your opponent, does anything big. And because you typically have things on board, it tends to mean that Spare the Target, stops a Sentinel and lets you hit base, and that's well worth it. While we're talking about tech, He's strong, he's good, he helps you in those control matchups where you just want resources, it gives you card advantage. Bright Hope is there against aggro. It's, again, really good. It's got a keyword, so it's, it buffs either itself or someone else. Escort Skiff, again, against aggro. Because it's conditional, I took one out, but I do think that it's worth moving in the aggro matchup. Same with Marauder. It's there for the aggro matchup, especially with this like Tarkin yellow space deck that's floating about. Marauder is really, really good at taking out those pesky TIE phantoms. And then Han is really good. I actually think that Han is one of the best plays against Blue Hero because Luke is a 7/6 and Han hits for 7 with Boba's ability. So that means that you can take out a Luke and then have a 7/6 on board. And then it becomes really tough. The obvious downside to that is that your opponent can then play their own Luke to take out your Han because he has 6 health. But I think that he's worth it. He's there for the mid-range matchup. And maybe you bring him in for the control because he can take out a bunch of Sentinels and not take any damage back. He's also tough to be takedowned. So unless they're running like Fell the Dragon or Rival's Fall, he stays around for a little while. So so here's the sideboard. There are a few cards that you can add that are a little bit more expensive or maybe a little bit more niche. So if you want to pay a little extra to make this deck more, not competitive, but have a little bit more of an edge against other decks that might have some of these cards, it's worth looking at. So the first one's Akbar. He's not a super expensive card. No, he's a rare, so he's not the cheapest card either. He has a keyword of Restore 1, and because you tend to have a lot of units on board, it's worth, having his win played. You tend to be dealing, 2 to 3, 4 sometimes damage. But I honestly think that he's not really worth it. He's one there that's more flavor to taste. If you really feel like he's worth having extra units with keywords in it, he's a solid choice. You have a lot of good 3-cost cards anyways, though, so I'm not super duper concerned about him. The next card, though, is the Falcon, which is a 3-cost card I would probably put in there. This is a 3/4 that enters play ready, and then when you ready cards during the regroup phase, you have to pay the Falcon tax. And honestly, you're okay with doing that a lot of the time. You have good units, and honestly, if you don't, it's not that big of a deal. You bounce it back to hand. But the great thing about the Falcon is that because it enters play ready, if you're playing it in a later turn, it can get buffed by units that are played with keywords. So therefore, it can turn into a 4/4, and dealing 4 damage to base has proven to be really good, as we've seen with 4 Cause I Believe in. So Falcon is good in game cards. It's currently like $30-$35 right now. So the more of these you add to your deck, the more it increases. Honestly, you have 3 of these in your deck, and suddenly it's about as expensive as the rest of the deck combined. So I think that Falcon might be worth it to those of you who already have it, but I wouldn't feel concerned about not running any of these. You've got the other Falcon, which is really good too. That is also an interesting interaction, though, because the Falcon has the same title as the other Falcon, as Lando's Falcon. So that means that Marauder can actually pick it up. If you have one Falcon in play and another one in your discard pile, you can put the one in your discard pile into resources, which is actually really unique. So this is one of those things that we're going to see more of as more sets get made, but it's totally worth keeping an eye on because I do think that the Falcon is worth slotting into your deck. And then the final expensive upgrade that you can make to this deck that I think just makes it so much better is the Showcase. Yeah, honestly, I think this deck is just really good for 75-ish bucks. I kept thinking, man, is there a card that just is so expensive that makes this deck cost prohibitive? But honestly, it's really just the Falcon, and even then, that's not the most expensive legendary out there. So yeah, if you want to just absolutely bling out this deck, you got the Boba Fett Showcase. It's pretty cool. I personally think it kind of looks like the Family Guy style, Star Wars stuff. So it's not my favorite. I'm perfectly content with the base Boba art, but to each his own. I think this is just a really neat way to, give some flavor maybe to one of your favorite decks or one of your favorite heroes. He does look absolutely awesome on the throne. So yeah, if you want to just give it that extra competitive edge, then boom, you got Boba Fett Daimyo as a Showcase leader. So yeah, this has been the deck tech. I'm actually just noticing as I get back that I have 2 Bounty Hunters Quarries in the main deck. I think I said that I had 1 earlier. I have 1 in the sideboard, 2 in the main deck. It's worth having 2 of in the main deck, I think. You got so many good choices to pull from it, so it can just absolutely swing you games by giving you so much extra tempo, especially on that 4-resource turn where maybe you're playing a Bounty Hunter's Quarry and Sundari Peacekeeper or something like that. And then you're getting an additional one of those by trading something in. I think that it's absolutely worth having 2 of, and maybe even 3 of. I've played with this deck a whole lot, and my general opinion is that this is the best possible build that I've run into against the most possible decks. I've played against the super fast Sabine aggros. I've played against the super greedy double green control Palpatines. I've played against all sorts of decks in the middle. I think it probably struggles the most against like a blue-yellow or blue-red, where it's just really difficult to keep a board because of all of the damage that is coming your way, or all of the removal that's coming your way. So that's probably the toughest thing, but because you have units that have higher health, you can start building your deck towards that rather than the cheap cards with low health like Cloud Rider. You can put in those higher health cards like Tech and Bright Hope, trying to keep them out of the range of their removal. But yeah, let me know what you think about this deck. I want to hear your feedback. I think that this deck is awesome, and to be under $75 is incredible. I'm planning on maybe even picking up a second copy of all of these cards just to have a deck ready to play for if anyone wants to join. It's an iconic character with some iconic cards within it. I think it's totally worth it to have just a cheap deck ready to go for whoever wants to sit down and play a game. But again, we are doing a giveaway as the month is coming to a close. I'll be randomly choosing someone who comments their favorite card below, and I'll be sending them a set of commons and uncommons for this most recent set for Shadows of the Galaxy. I think it's a great way to get people into the game, so whether you want the cards or you want to pass them on to some friends, I think it's totally worth it. So just comment below your favorite card in the game, and you can catch me next time in the next Acorn Hobbies video. So go ahead and leave a like and a subscribe. It helps the channel so much as we're kind of getting off the ground. But yeah, I'm just super stoked about running this deck. And if you run into me playing it on anything, if you want to play me on locals or on webcams or something like that, hit me up. I'd totally be down. It's going to be awesome. I think this deck is so incredible. So let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will catch y'all on the next one. Bye.